part 2. We are talking about it here today. We had the first video, it went well. Let's dive into the second video now. What up team, it's your MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video, talking about overpowered champions that you probably pushed aside, haven't invested in, or simply don't know about, or you've been using them this whole time. Very possible, lots of people play this game for sure. So we're going to be talking about epics, we're going to be talking about a rare and an uncommon. Now hold up, pause. Are you watching the right channel? Did he just say rare and uncommon? Yes, he did. Rare on this channel for sure, because most of the rare uncommon takes are kind of baits. They're good for like 4 months of gameplay and then they fall off the face of the map. These champions, however, they last quite a bit longer. So with that, I want to talk about the first one that I've used many times in many series. If you've watched me for a while, that's going to be Shield Guard. He's the starter that I start with on every account that I've ever made. I've never picked Kayle. Well, I've picked Kayle, but I've never picked Kayle, Gallic, Aethel, Elaine, Ellen as I call her. I don't use those champions. I go to the market, I use the Shield Guard. This guy is insane, insane. I've showed it in practice. I've proven that his viability, the gearing of this guy, what he offers to your account, it speeds up progression more than any of the other 4 rare champion starters, and he's so cheap to invest into because he is an uncommon champion. So you don't have to worry about books, you can get skill ups from the marketplace, yada yada yada, all that good stuff. What does he do? What makes him so good? Decrease speed in the A1, not the worst, up to a 50% chance, rather high. The A2, amazing. AoE attacks all enemies, fills this champion's turn meter by 20% for each crit, very powerful, as well as damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So as you're building him to be tanky, he's getting this additional layer of damage on top of it, which is the opposite to any other champion that you can think of that's attack based, right? You build attack, you're not getting any survivability. This guy, you're building damage on this guy, he's gaining survivability as well. But his passive really sticks out. Remove 1 debuff from this champion each turn. So when I'm progressing through the campaign, I get a nasty debuff on me. It's literally gone just like that. He's getting tons of turns due to his A2 ability, giving more speed, more turn meter on a crit. So this guy's just so strong. With that being said, how did I build him for today's video to show you kind of the longevity of this guy? Early on, you're going to want to build him for damage, of course, getting through those waves. Using him as a wave clear champion, viable for sure, but he's not just done after the early game. If you swap him over to a CC set, wouldn't recommend sleep, because he's going to get so many turns, he's going to be waking up the people he just put to sleep. Stun set. Stun set's going to be my recommended set for sure here. High speed, as high as you can go. I'm just using the gear I have. It's of course going to be above average here, but you don't have to use speeds like this. So stun set, speed set, any type of refresh accessory is going to be fine. 100% crit rate no matter what. Don't even think about going anything lower. I'm at 113. That's where my gear landed. As far as masteries go, I elected not to go with War Master. Early game, when you're first building him, I think War Master is going to be the play for sure, because you are doing a more damage-oriented build. If you don't want to go War Master, you can absolutely go Helm Smasher to give him increased damage for sure. But once you start getting to like, that's going to heavily focus on your progression stages for this game, I would take this Fearsome Present, giving you a higher chance of landing that provoke, and the rest of these masteries, of course, giving him some tankiness, accuracy, all of that good stuff. The next champion is an interesting one. We are talking about Ironclad. Now, I did some testing with Ironclad when Skytouched Shaman came out. A long time ago, I know. It was a lot of fun, but I tested him in a way I'm not going to showcase him today. This guy can surprisingly do tons of damage with this passive here. When healed, will attack all enemies, inflicting damage proportional to any surplus heal. Damage inflicted is equal to 50% of any surplus heals. So, if you don't know how Skytouched Shaman works, the lower Skytouched Shaman's health is, the bigger her heal is. And that scales insanely high with the right gear sets. So I put this guy in full Savage gear, and I was getting Skytouched Shaman's health low. He had Helm Smasher for masteries, and this guy was almost one-shotting waves. Now the setup is really hard to do, so it's not going to be that viable, which is why I didn't choose to show in this, but it was a really cool interaction. Now yes, this can work with someone like an apothecary, and don't worry, Doom Priest isn't on here. Everyone knows how good Doom Priest is. I would never waste part of this video talking about her, but she's going to be my synergy with Ironclad here. So I built him in a stun set because the passive deals damage. Anytime damage is dealt, it can proc a CC set, making him a very strong CC champion. Unfortunately, that's all he has, but the passive is so strong, it can be very beneficial here. This is not terrible. A lower increased attack on all allies and removing one random debuff from all allies, not the worst thing in the world. Could be completely useless, just the passive, but the A2 does offer some value here. As far as masteries, the support tree doesn't really matter for this guy. All that matters is the defense tree. You could fill this however you wanted to. If you wanted to increase the amount of heals this guy gets, sure, why not? That kind of makes sense for this guy, but outside of that, none of this is really, I guess accuracy if you really wanted to, but it's just not going to add up because speed tuning is important when you want to use this properly. So he has a ton of speed just based on the gear I'm using, 306 speed. So what does that mean? The healer you're using has to be faster, right? You proc the extra proc from his passive, it goes on cooldown, he gets a turn, then the healer gets a turn again, and you just go back and forth. Why did I pick Doom Priest? Quite obvious, she also has a passive that heals at the start of the turn. So they're just going to be proccing this back and forth as they get turns here. So that's going to be Ironclad, the second champion we're highlighting. The third one, Sanguinia. As soon as she came out, I made a video and said, oh my god, look at this champion. This is one of the few champions you will ever see me talk about with Relentless gear on. I think Relentless gear is the most overhyped gear set in this entire game because it falls off so hard in the end game. If you see someone praising a Relentless gear set, it's very likely they are not an end game player because the consistency, there's just so much that isn't good with Relentless that's so much better for Reflex gear. So why is Sanguinia different? That's an interesting take here. Because of her A1, A2, and A3, mostly the A1, it's not bad to get an extra proc to use the A1 again. It's a triple hit, meaning you can get value out of Giant Slayer. Each hit has a 20% chance of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target. There's tons of content where that can be very useful. Of course, it goes up another 10%, so a 30% chance total on each hit. So there's a lot of benefit here for sure. Just for fun, when she came out, I built her for damage. She kind of slaps, not gonna lie, but this is why I like Relentless here. Reflex gear would be amazing if her A1 wasn't as good as it is. If you just wanted to focus on lowering the cooldown of the A2 and the A3, that's where Reflex shines, and that's the case for, I want to say 90%, if not 99% of champions, and my Reflex is infinitely better than Relentless gear. So speaking of A2 and A3, Holy Blood, block debuff for 1 turn, continuous heal, 3 turn cooldown once booked, very strong, don't have to kind of go over that too much. This is the interesting one, Sacrificial Lamb, 4 turn cooldown once it's fully booked, as well as a 100% chance once fully booked of transferring all debuffs from this champion to the target. More importantly, removes all debuffs from all allies except this champion. So it's a full cleanse across the board, transfers what she has to the enemy, and then removes the debuffs from all of your allies. First place I used this champion was the Poison Spider in the Doom Tower, crazy champion for that content. What do we do here? We just have resistance here, nothing too crazy on that. The goal is you don't want her to get stunned. That's kind of the most threatening thing to a champion like this, is getting stunned. So we have revenge accessories. If you have it, great. If not, doesn't matter. But like I said, the A1's powerful, so if you can utilize it as many times as you can, that's where the revenge comes in practice here. We talked about how strong Reflex gear is, many set of Reflex being the refresh accessories here, and then of course, as mentioned before, we do have Relentless gear because I do favor the A1 slightly higher than just straight up building her in Reflex. And now it goes to the last champion that I want to talk about for this video, Nazana. Nazana, who? You know exactly who this champion is if you've ever done Faction Wars on the Demon Spawn faction. She's in a few other places in the game, but you'll recognize her and remember her from here because of this ability right here, Unholy Contract. Ally protection for 2 turns, placing a shield buff for 2 turns. The value of the shield is equal to 40%. That's a lot. It's rarely this high, especially when it's ally protect, but 40% shield of this champion's max HP. So crazy synergy there. Very strong as far as an ally protection champion for sure. Doesn't give defense up on this champion, doesn't give strengthen. Those are good buffs for sure, but 40% shield, it's hard to compete with that, especially with having 21,480 base HP. So A1, AoE. First thing to keep in mind. A3, also an AoE, has a chance, 75% chance, of placing attack down, the strong attack down on all enemies. So we have 2 AoEs and an ally protection. So what's the first thing that came to mind? Stun set. You want a stun set, you don't want her to be crazy fast. She's definitely a little bit faster than I wanted, but high emphasis on HP. Defense, if you can get 4K, it's not bad, but the survivability is always favorite HP over defense, since the defense it falls off, especially since you have a shield. So the thing with survivability is you would consider survivability as this broad spectrum of all the things that can affect a champion, whether it's a buff, a shield, the HP, the defense, attack down applied. All of these things accumulate together, formulating the strength of a champion's defensive capabilities. This champion scales incredibly with HP, as most champions do, but even more so since she has the shield here. So now that I've gone over the champions, I'm going to show you the masters really quickly. Pretty straightforward. We're buffing shields here. We are taking fearsome presence. We don't care too much about damage, because we want the stuns to land. So as far as testing these champions, I'll still bring them inside some dungeons just to kind of show you what we're dealing with here. Let's do dragon, because dragon's kind of the go-to like we just did from our last video here. So let's head straight and just use the vault. We have HP and faction crypts, we don't care about that. HP in all battles, that'll help for sure. And we have so many stun sets, I feel like it's almost not worth showcasing all of these champions. What's the first thing what do we really want to do here? So we have stun set on Nazana, stun set on okay, so there's a lot here. So the first thing we can do is we can attempt just to showcase the first 2 champions together, right? Let's just see how this goes, just for kicks. We may die. Okay, there's the first one. Stun goes out, bam. We get a turn here. This one doesn't really matter. It's just go and smack this guy. Second stun, bam. There we go. Use this again. Look at that. Almost all of them, we had pretty bad luck as far as proccing it, but we got 3 turns before they got 1. Is my speed crazy? Yes. Is your speed going to be this high in Dragon 25? Probably not. But this is just what I'm talking about here. The value we're getting, and this is almost the issue here, is you need a support to benefit it. Notice how there are no stuns going out? It's because he's not full health anymore. This is because the proc chance, and you really need another defensive layer, because if not, they're probably going to die. Okay, so he's getting very close to death here. Okay, and dead. So end battle, we're going to go back to it. Now let's try this again and add tank. Tank. Now let me show you how crazy Nazana's shield is. First thing goes out, we get 1 stun. Nice, let's hit this guy. Let's go ahead and smack this guy again here. I don't want to use a stun just yet, but let me just show you the shield on this champion. That is a huge shield that you have to get through now. And granted, this champion's a bit too fast for me to use that, but I didn't want to steal some thunder with the stuns. Like, let's see. Okay, we got 1 additional stun. We have attack down on 3 of them. Not the worst. Actually, everyone had attack down on. So just going through this right here, you can see how strong of a combination this is all going to be. Let's go ahead and use this AoE, double stun once again. I mean, this is a crazy trio right here. Even if you don't have the speeds that I currently have, this is still going to be an insane trio in pretty much any content you do. Now let's go ahead. Everyone's stunned. The turn meters aren't high enough to be worried. So we're going to go ahead. Another stun once again. The strength of 2 stun champions with fast speed, getting many turns here, is just, it's fun to watch. Granted, I'm doing practically negative damage. These champions can last such a long time in the right hands if you build them properly. You don't have to be getting 50 turns like I'm getting here. The fact that there's attack down, stun available, you have to know your champion's synergy, how they work, and you will be incredibly successful in this game for sure. So now that you've gotten the main point, while this team is just perma CC'd, this is going to be like an hour-long battle for sure. But the good news is we're not dying anytime soon. So with that being said, let me just cancel out of this. And let's go ahead and showcase. We'll get rid of these two. Let's put in Sanguinia as well as Shield Guard here to really get a feel for what these champions add here. So we saw the benefit already from Nazana's survivability and what she added. Despite it wasn't the best example because the other two champions that I just showed were way too fast. Now that we slowed things down a little bit, let's see how we do. So we're still going to be getting tons of turns here. Let's just go ahead and do something like this. Okay, bam. We got 1 stun up and running. 2 stuns up and running. He gets another turn because the turn meter gains insane on this guy. Let's go ahead for the triple hit. Already back off cooldown. Look at him. His turn meter's back to full pretty much. Proper crit rate. It's really hard to hit on this guy. Let's go ahead and protect our team just in case we take some damage. Let's go ahead and knock this guy. Turn meter decreased. We're fine. Okay. AoE, once again, only 1 stun proccing. We don't really care because our guy is incredibly tanky and the turn meter, I mean, you can just do the math in your head, right? AoE, 5 targets, a lot of turn meter. And 5 targets should be the minimum unless you start one-shotting champions. If you have single target champions in your team, it's definitely going to remove a lot of value from someone like Shield Guard, but it's not the end of the world. And if you bring this guy to somewhere like Spider, good luck getting a turn. This guy's turn meter is going to fill up incredibly fast. It's harder though because he has to have 100% crit rate, which means in the earlier stages, and I've struggled with this myself, which is why I'm talking about it, he's going to be killing the spiderlings. It's hard not to build survivability on this guy when you need crit rate to build turn meter for all the other content, and he's just going to slowly start killing the spiderlings. Once they go away, your team can be left in a pretty rough situation. So this is the basic concept here. Even if you've built this guy in early game, and then you're like, okay, I used him in early game and now it's time for me to progress, he still is useful, still gains lots of value as that CC role character, because while he is kind of a glass cannon, talking about Shield Guard here, with synergy, adding someone like Nazana, adding someone else that provides constant shields, like I say Lota that I showed you from the last video, Sanguinia with really strong heals, like this, he's a CC powerhouse, so he transitions, and this is why he's useful so far into the game. Alright guys, that's going to be the showcase of my video here today on champions that overpowered and you probably have. Now what I want to do that's different from the first video is give me some suggestions. What champions do you think that I should be covered? I still have plenty more. Not so much legendaries. I can go into legendaries for sure since I'm more familiar with pretty much every single legendary in this game. But if there are any champions that really stand out to you, there are a few rares in my mind that I can talk about. Yes, there's Armiger, unfortunately without insane quality gear, and I know I am showing champions in quite high gear, but that's simply for showcase purposes. As I've elaborated in previous videos, it's not because they need this to compete in content. However, someone like Armiger actually does need quite insane gear to have any type of relevancy in the end game, so I don't really think he's one of these champions that are kind of overpowered that will last you down the line if you do choose to invest in him. So give me your thoughts and feedback in the comments. Who else would you add to a part 3, a part 4 of this? They can be uncommons if you can find them, commons, that would be crazy, rare champions, epic champions, I'm curious, and if you want to throw in some legendaries that people kind of overlook quickly, you can absolutely do that. I'll be able to weigh in much better on those suggestions for sure. So as always guys, if you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next upload.